whenever you layer in a self-serve motion into a sales-led company, it will shed spotlight on any issues that are there at the company. Small things become big things become massive things. It's part of why it's so challenging, because there's never just one thing to sort out. It's a plethora. And the company typically doesn't have the muscle yet to do it because they've been developing muscle in a different gym.
Welcome to the Product Tea with Leah. I am your host, Leah Darin, and we are about to spill the tea with the best from tech about product growth and senior leadership topics. Morning, everyone. Today's guest deals with hockey sticks and growth. She has a knack for transforming strategic plans into scalable successes. For instance, launching Amplitude's first self-serve paid plan and a brand new free plan, innovating beyond the traditional sales-led approaches. She's a featured guest in growth and retention series on Reforge and collaborating on their product releases, but she's also supporting as an angel and growth advisor many startups like Orb, Builder.io, Frame.so, Babybox, 123, and Prefab, and probably a couple of them that I just misspelled. She also believes in the power of intrinsic motivation and strategic innovation, and is definitely not visible enough on social media, something we are about to change, at least for today. Welcome to the Product Tea, Laura Schaffer. Oh no, I did it.
There's so many ways to pronounce it. No, that's appropriate. That's reflective of how it's said. So great. Well, I am so glad to be here. It's really awesome to be connecting because you live on my feed. So I feel like I've talked with you before because I've seen you so much. So this is great. Now it can actually pair with how my mind is perceiving you, that we've actually talked now.
That is really good. So we're going to do a post-interview 360 management degree review of me, whether I'm actually am like the way that you expected. But before we do that, Laura, can you introduce yourself to the audience with 2 short sentences, or 3, as much as you want?
I'll do my best. Yeah. So I'm Laura. I mean, you really gave the intro, but yeah, basically I've been doing growth for almost 15 years, started into it by accident. Maybe we'll talk about it, but love everything growth and love empowering users to sell themselves. And so my life has been a journey of being in that headspace, finding challenges, new challenges in there, and then a bunch of trial and error to try to build that motion and deliver that value for users. So it's been, again, trial, error, lots of failure, lots of learning, but very fun. And that's me in a nutshell. I've got 3 kids, 1, 3, and 5. So also growing humans on the side, which is fun and also challenging, but that's me.
That's really cool. So I'm almost the same. I'm 50% the same. I exchanged the error in trial and error with a freemium, trials and freemiums. Okay, that was almost dad joke level. So Laura, what do people get wrong about you once they get to know you?
Oh gosh, I think I really try to lean in, listen, collaborate, and be as a team oriented as possible. And I think sometimes they're surprised when I actually have very, very high conviction on things. And I can be like, I love to debate also. So until somebody kind of gets to a point where we disagree on something, like people always have like a moment where like, oh, you actually have strong conviction. You're going to debate me. Like you're not kind of a soft, fluffy entity, which I think I sometimes can come across as. So I'll say for those of you who have done like personality tests and all of that jazz, whenever I do those, I'm always very different on the spectrum than other leaders that I work with. Like almost everyone is like, what is it, ENTJ, and on the disc, they're Ds and whatever. And I'm like hanging out on the S and somewhat of the I, or ENFP, like more of the kind of jovial personality groups. But I do love a good debate. So that's usually, sometimes when I join a new company or I start working with new people, they'll say, like, okay, there's an interesting dexterity, I think, between those two that people aren't expecting. So it's fun for me when I'm like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to have some thoughts.
Okay. So, I mean, for myself, I try to always go last in any meeting because whenever I speak, people think that it is for some reason true. I don't know. I mean, I don't mean this as a flex or anything. This is another thing, by the way. People think that I'm just like constantly flexing my muscles all the time, like, oh, or whatever. And I'm just like, no. I'm just stating like, this is legit what's happening. People for some reason think to a fault that when I'm saying something that this is how they should do it. Like I always joked with my PMs at the beginning that whenever I said something, it lands 2 seconds afterwards in the backlog. And then they say like, yeah, but Leah said, and I'm like, no. That's not what I mean. I want to discuss it as well, right? Like,
well, I think it comes from, like, I've experienced some of that too. I think when you come out with high conviction And is it high conviction, loosely held or something like that, right? Is the ideal. People don't hear the loosely held part in the voice. They
No.
hear the high conviction and they're like, whoa, okay, well, that feels like an unstoppable force. And maybe she knows what she's doing. So yeah, let's run with that. And it's like, yeah, trying to add the asterisk on. I've tried things like, because I've run into that a little bit too. I've tried things like putting ideas in documents so that it takes my tone and energy out of it and it just like surfaces the concept. I've tried explicitly saying, hey, I'm going to say something. And then I actually want everyone to share one reason why it's wrong or why you disagree. But yeah, I'm with you. There's a there. I think also just those of us that have done PLG for a while, it's kind of like if you don't go in with conviction, nothing will get done. So maybe we overcorrect,
No, that's true. I think that's true. So I think the document thing is nice in theory. For me, it's like I also come across pretty brash over written communication, just like that's wrong. Just like that's wrong, dot. And then it's like the CPO just said it's wrong. And yeah, exactly. This is me. And I don't do it on purpose, right? So, but I feel like you have to have like two different personalities. One of them for the leadership kind of circle, because there it definitely is necessary that you fight for your stuff, right? Because if I say that,
sure.
well, I need 150,000 for the next year for this particular project, I'm going to be probably the person in the room that also made the math and is also bearing the brunt of case it would be more or less or whatever it is, right? So
Yeah,
I don't know.
for sure.
It's always difficult. But yeah. Okay. So Laura, there's a thing that both you and me are talking about and thinking about a lot. And we talked in the pre-talk about what we should talk about. So now I said the word talk about 5 times. So product-led talking. Let's just start on the very basics. You said that the way that we are selling to people is changing. It's been changing for quite some time. And I think you have something interesting to say because it also matters from where you start. So let's just go there. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that's to start with some of the changes, like the big changes that have happened over, let's say, the last like 15-ish years. And then back into kind of what that means and what companies are doing or not doing to adapt to that, which is that, 15-ish years ago, digital technology wasn't quite where it is today, right? I mean, a lot of companies didn't even have self-serve checkout or self-serve product. It was a lot of companies had websites, right? Even those were kind of still evolving. And the technology wasn't making it crazy easy to iterate. Like just, it wasn't there. So when it comes to, selling, like which is conveying value to someone and getting them to give you money for that, it had to fall on people. It had to fall on people. It had to fall on kind of content. It certainly couldn't fall on self-serve product experiences because technology wasn't there. And that's not what was available. And so people had to figure out what to buy and what to use by a more kind of sales human process, content process, more traditional marketing process. We are now at a state where that is not the case, right? It is quite easy to iterate within most digital product environments. It is certainly easy with the right tools to iterate within a marketing website, minus some of the getting people aligned internally, which we can talk about too. But like from a technology perspective, it's easy, it's possible. And so along with that, strong companies, PLG companies have built those experiences and the market has come to expect it. Because the reality is, again, putting your head in the mind of a user and maybe even yourself, if you think about how you like to buy things and evaluate things, I love to think of it as like, how do you choose an ice cream when you go up to an ice cream stand? Do you prefer to have the person tell you which one's the best? Which flavor is the best? Do you prefer to read a pamphlet about which, describing the flavors and the comparisons? Or do you prefer to just try it? Like you just try it yourself and make your own decision, right? And obviously, most of you would say, and certainly I would say, that you prefer to try it. That's the way that I know what's actually going to work for me. And so I think, again, coming back to, that the market and the digital capabilities, what it means is that more and more people are expecting that experience and preferring that experience. And so companies who are delivering that are seeing folks, come in and try and accelerate through the sales process. And companies who haven't done that yet and are still relying on the human element are not meeting a fundamental need that users have to self-evaluate and see what's going on. So, but as you said, you mentioned like, hey, where companies are at is sort of an element, which is true. It's easier said than done, some of this. Some companies recognize this and are like, well, what do I do about it? And it's quite challenging.
No.
But I think that's environment we're in. So anyway, that's the change. And it's part of why, again, I love PLG, because not only do I think it's powerful today, but I think it's going to be massively powerful, continue to be more powerful, and frankly, a necessity in the future.
So I spoke to Blake Bartlett about this. I think he was one of the OGs that just called it product-led growth from OpenView, like before they sort of imploded now into the ether. But I think the interesting thing is, like, I think he had some of these takes like a year ago or something. They said, like, everything is going to be PLG. Everything is going to be PLG. And I think what you just spoke on is a probably more nuanced take, in a sense of, like, people are starting to expect it. And what that means is, in business language, is that it is not anymore a differentiator that you can rely on solely, because every other company that is also getting founded with you at the same time in parallel is probably having some kind of element of it. The way that I usually try to explain it is that product-led growth, as far as you can do it to a specific unit efficiency, as long as it's possible in your vertical, you should probably do it. Because if you don't do it, you have, like, your metrics just look worse, right? Like, I also think that PLG is very useful for retention, like it can inform you on what to build and so forth. So all of these kind of things are starting now to move and see together. If I want to make like an outrageous statement, I still think that product-led sales is the future for almost every company for two reasons. When we talk about product-led sales, we talk about this mixture between product-led growth and sales-led growth. Companies who just compete on PLG and only have the lower kind of segment tend to not grow very far, because they cannot serve the really juicy enterprise segments that we all love and have in our upmarket segment. So
Yes.
you started at Amplitude as well with a very specific mission back in the days. And I think it's very much on point on what we're going to talk about today. Can you give us some context on this? So, like, what did you land in on? What was your mission? And then how did we end up here?
Yeah, totally. And by the way, I totally agree. The human element is still very critical, but paired with the self-service, we can talk about it too. But yeah, for context on Amplitude. So I joined Amplitude, and when I joined Amplitude, they had really a sales-led motion. That was kind of the entirety of what was the anchor of their kind of growth motion, growth efforts. And my charter was to come in and layer in a self-serve motion, right? So PLG, leaning into PLS. But our goal, and we're really trying to do again with that PLG motion, is ultimately to drive pipeline up for our sales organization. And we do have certainly, a nice healthy group of credit card swipers, which is great and wonderful. But really at the end of the rainbow, we're trying to complete the swing and have those folks, again, see value, grow in that value, and then be motivated buyers of enterprise offerings, right? And that's where, the human element comes in, contracts and all that stuff. So anyway, so that was my kind of journey here. So, I joined beginning of last year, and we launched a self-serve product, started rolling out in August. That was our first kind of self-serve paid offering, and an all new free plan. And we have plenty of warts. We are on a journey for sure. But yeah, it's become a really fun, strong motion for us internally. But it's also been, again, you mentioned kind of trial and error, all that. There's so many components to layering in self-serve, people components, product components, marketing components, so many things. When you layer in a new revenue motion, it touches everyone. Let me tell you, and anyone who's experienced this before will be like, yep, nodding. Whenever you layer in a self-serve motion into a sales-led company, it will shed spotlight on any issues that are there at the company. Small things become big things, big things become massive things. It's part of why it's so challenging, because there's never just one thing to sort out. It's a plethora. And the company typically doesn't have the muscle yet to do it, because they've been developing muscle in a different gym. So, but anyway, yes, that's the context.
I think you just phrased it really beautifully. That's the kind of a problem, right? Like, product-led growth products are really good because they're so easy to use. Because if they would not be easy to use, as an example, right, like the onboarding and so forth, you're going to get slapped in the face immediately. Salespeople also love, by the way, easy to use products because they're easier to demo. That's true, right? But like, easy to use products and easy to understand are probably more self-serve rather than anything else. So they're always stuck in this kind of conundrum of like, oh, the product sucks, but it doesn't suck that much. And I think, yeah, we have arrived at the fun part of the discussion. It's one of my favorite topics, so how do we piss off salespeople? Not exactly true. So, but there's a real worry about this. And I think I love it that you also said that the way that we use PLG is also ultimately also a function of upselling. And upselling means going up market in some kind of way, whether you're doing it afterwards through customer success, where we start to expand accounts, or accounts start to grow with us. And we say like, hey, we've been using you for 5 years. Now we're growing as a company. We would like to have Gary, the sales guy, on the call, whatever it is. I mean, it is fundamentally the longest kind of sales activation journey that you could have, right? Without them going to another competitor.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good one. So let me just ask you a little bit I don't know whether you could talk about it, like some war stories, or whether we just have to exclude people from Amplitude when they're listening into this podcast. But can you maybe speak a little bit on how, I don't know how early you were there, like when you were conceptually like talking about this, where was the buy-in coming from? Was sales just like on the table and they just hated it? Or how did this come to be that you had the buy-in to also move forward with something like this?
Yeah, for sure. And here's what I'll say first before I kick off. What's interesting about this, and I think part of the reason it's so prevalent in companies is it's not due to people being dumb or people being hard to work with that folks are afraid of it or nervous or disagree. It's rather that, companies that have leaders who have healthy emotions, it's a disruptive. And anything that's disruptive, whether it's good disruptive or bad disruptive, folks are going to come out and have strong feelings and it's going to be challenging and there's going to be conflict. So I actually think, so I'm happy to go into some of the details here because again, it's not reflective of people not doing their jobs well or not knowing what they're doing. It's actually the opposite. It's that they understand their job so well that when something comes in that's disruptive, they're going to come to the table and have concerns because that's what they should have, right? So anyway, so just some examples, right? Which is also again typical and prevalent. It's like, well, okay, if we're going to layer in a self-serve motion, what's going to be our top line offering? And hey, isn't that going to compete with our enterprise? And hey, aren't we going to see some cannibalization? What if the self-serve package starts to smell good to people who are on like an enterprise plan? Like what exactly is going to be in it? And it feels like you're going to eat my lunch, right? And there's no sales rep out there, they're commission driven, who's going to feel immediately warm fuzzies about something that could take their commission,
Yeah,
right?
a way to earn less.
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's that very interesting moment where it's actually quite expected and healthy and normal for there to be strong contention for something, which is not always the way it is with, motions that are sort of obvious and a good idea or should make sense to meet market needs, that it also inherently comes with conflict and friction. So it's sort of, again, interesting, healthy. But yeah, when I joined, my very first meeting there, Monday morning, 9 a.m., was actually meeting with a lot of our leaders, basically talking about how they were trying to get on the same page about this, but hadn't figured out really how to do it. And there was a lot of conflict and disagreement. And it was all, eating lunch and like, what are the features going to be? And like, what's the differentiation? And how are we going to go to the market with this thing? How are we going to support? It was all the, again, very normal, healthy things. And they brought me in part because they hadn't figured out how to come together and just get the thing out. And the amount of fear, concern was overriding the value. And part of it was many things. But basically, just taking kind of piece by piece, probably the biggest ones were, one, because there was a lot of disagreement and conflict, which is also something I've seen in other companies too, when they're trying to do this, there wasn't a clear, easy footing for people to agree on big things. What I mean to say is whenever there were big decisions, like, hey, what features to put into it, they're basically like a bunch of like meetings, one-on-ones and group meetings and all these things to try to like bludgeon it to death with meetings to try to get to an answer versus, hey, look, we have a clear strategy. This is the priority. This is going to guide decisions.
No.
That then removes the need for meetings. And then the other thing was we didn't have a framework, and a lot of companies don't, for making calls when we don't know, when actually something scary could happen. There wasn't a great like, hey, here's a really clear risk mitigated way to make a call and get something shipped. And so I'm happy to talk about my hypothesis and counter hypothesis framework, which I found to be very effective in that zone. But anyway, so yeah, I came in fresh when there was a lot of difference opinion, healthy conflict debate, let's say healthy kind of disagreements and the right kind of concerns. But at the time, not a clear path how to come out of that and get the thing out.
And was this jump from, and we talked about a free plan. And I just want to be always clear when I talk about the terminology that we use right now, because PLG, when we talk about it obviously in the context of B2B, because everybody else says like, hey, we've been doing this for 150 years. Yeah, we know. Okay, it's fine, Gary. Thank you. So it's just like, yes, we know. So what you're really talking about is introducing a freemium when there was already trial versions established, right?
Yeah. So basically and this is actually, I've seen this before, like what Amplitude had is they had a free plan that was meant to try to bridge to an enterprise contract plan, right?
No.
So there's something out there that had like some level of features. It hadn't really changed. It had been out for a while, hadn't really changed. And there was definitely, I mean, there were absolutely, as most companies, there were people doing some of the product-led growth stuff. Like they were doing, like some of it existed, but there just was no like actual like self-serve credit card paid plan to move through. And there was no, again, like ongoing kind of iteration and thought about how that free plan should adjust, change, update based on how the company's growing, changing, and like feeding into. So there's really some like awesome like early things there. And really the big gap was not having that self-serve kind of paid motion out in conjunction with thought about how all pricing and packaging fits
No.
together to support that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's quite important to also mention because most companies have some kind of trial, but they're sometimes also like, but there, I think in my head, there is a difference between the classical sales trials where we just say like, hey, like, hey, you're going to get like a 30-day demo of what has been shown to you now, and you kind of understand it now because sales also onboarded you to some kind of part, which is fine in a very, very integration heavy environment and so forth. I get it. But like what we're talking about here is really like a self-served way into a trial without having to have anyone on the call in some kind of way. I mean, you can still do that if you want to, right? Like you can also contact sales right now on Amplitude without doing anything. So there is a difference between, right? Like a trial is not always a trial, but when I face the questions in my cohorts about like, hey, so should we have a trial or not? Then they're always like, can you rephrase the question, please? Because what are you trying to do with it? Like, what is the purpose of it? And how long should we allow the customers to have it? So this is another interesting one. I'm not sure whether let me just blindside you now with a question on
I
this one.
love being blindsided. Yes. Give it to
Very
me.
good. Let's blindside each other. So on trials in general, and I don't know how it is right now for amplitudes, frankly, I'm right now hovering a little bit on the pricing page.
Yeah.
How long should you structure as a B2B business that is coming from this kind of sales motion a trial? When is too much and when is it too little? How do you structure it? How do you think about it?
Yeah. So first, it's a spectrum, right? And it's all going to change. And frankly, it'll change over time. Where it's right in time for one moment will not be the same a year later after your company's changed. But basically, here's the fundamental way that I break it down is the point of giving away something for free is to get someone to get over the hump of friction that pricing is. Pricing is just friction, just like bad UX or complexity or expertise gaps. It's just friction. So what you're trying to do is give enough value. You get someone over that friction threshold and they're willing to pay you, right? And that's why when we talk about PLG and self-serve, it's a journey through where, free is the first part. Someone comes in, their value is like none. Maybe if they referred, they have a little bit of motivation and energy, but largely speaking, they're low there. You got to earn that right to get over the friction. And so most companies, in order to help someone get up over the hurdle of that, need to be thoughtful about a number of things, but that's the core framework. And then when you think about your paid instance and right, why do companies have self-serve paid plans? Why do they make sense? Well, that sales contract is way up here. That's hard to get enough value to get over the hump. And again, as we talked about, the market is expecting to be able to do a lot of that on their own. They're expecting that. So if you don't have that, your sales rep has now got to figure out with words and a demo and whatever to try to get someone up over the hurdle is hard. So where, again, PLG and certainly self-serve paid plans, lower end long tail paid plans can help as it gets people in the habit of paying. It gets them over that hurdle. Because once you kind of get over that hurdle, you're like, there's like a very interesting like psychological thing that happens, which is like, I clearly value this because I've paid for it now. Mm-hmm. The momentum from that is so big. I mean, I've been at so many companies where like one of the things I talk about with sales and part of how I get some of the things out the door, coming back to how do you resolve some of that conflict when sales says, hey, you're going to come eat my lunch, is you say, look, I'm not going to eat your lunch. I'm going to eat your snacks. And I'm sorry, I am. I'm coming in hot and I'm going to eat your snacks. But I'm going to give you a buffet. And then I talk about the 0 to 1, 1 to 5, and 5 to 100, and 100 to 1,000. And in that construct, I say, look me in the face and tell me the hardest part of your job isn't trying to get someone from 0 to 1. And they can't say that to me. Say, no, that's always the hardest. Getting someone from 0 to 1 is very, very hard. And I say, great, let me do that. Let me shovel that for you. And so it's like, again, it comes back again. Yeah. So coming back to the free question, right? So what's the right structure? Well, remember, pricing is just friction, just like bad UX and everything else. So, right, you've got a lot of dials to lower that bar for yourself, but really your free plan's got to be strong enough to get people over the hurdle. And so things like time trials, risky because people don't always you're not always their sole focus and attention. got other stuff going on. If you don't give them enough runway to get up over the hurdle and they make it to here, man, that sucks because you were close, but they're gone now. You ran out of time. So again, you think about the levers, freemium, which features, UX, all of it together. You're just trying to get over the hurdle. And then, of course, you got to iterate. Things change.
This is a very good point, and I think you did not fall for the trap that Leah just sloppily set out. So, of course, no, it's exactly correct. I also, in my mind, the way I'm thinking about it, it's really funny, though, as well, because I'm also thinking about it in this way. I try to even break it down much, much more than this. I was always thinking in regards to, let me just give this to you right now. So, like, the way that I'm thinking is that this concept of we're building some kind of goodwill with customers before we cash in the friction. This is how I talk about it, right? And for me, there's a difference between bad UX and payment, because bad UX is, you can deal with it. Payment, you cannot really deal with it. It's just what it is. Maybe in the future, I don't know, we could deal with it. I don't know, like AI buying products from each other, then maybe we're all going to be rich.
All right, we'll save that topic for another time.
The way that I'm thinking about it is on two ways. The first one is like when you have a payment about $1 a month, let's just say like some kind of low amount, doesn't matter. Then it's about getting a credit card. That's the difficult friction in there, right? Like I need some kind of form of payment. It doesn't matter. It's not about the money. It's more about like, in a B2B company, you need to go to Spendesk, you need to create your virtual card or whatever you're using for this particular thing. If it's $10,000, then it's about the amount of money, but not the payment amount anymore, because that's just like, you need to go through an approval process. It frankly doesn't matter probably to the company whether they just wire it or whether they send it to you to credit card or whatever it is. If you pay that much money per month, you probably have some kind of different invoicing, even though not entirely true anymore, which is funny. So, there's a lot of products, maybe yours included, they just deducted from the company credit card up to, I don't know, whatever amount. But here's an interesting thing. I think there is something now coming up as well with some companies that is even before the freemium doing exactly the same that the freemium does for a trial or a pro plan, which is creating goodwill to get into the freemium. What am I talking about, right? So like commonly we were talking about interactive demos and so forth, right? Like we try to kind of make things a little bit easier. And I had a very fascinating call with Enrique Cruz 2 days ago from Rose, the way that they're doing this. I don't know whether you know Rose, but it's a very interesting thing. If you go to rose.com, you land in the product. You're in the product. There's no registration. There's nothing.
This is awesome. I'm so glad we're talking about this. But yes, keep rolling.
So the thing is, like now I'm thinking about, hey, there is definitely some hesitation for people to even use signups, even if they're simple, even if it's like single sign-on stuff, like, like I have another product that is sending me garbage to my email. That is friction. It's not just like the UX, right? Now, the interesting thing is, right before this, there are some products where you can actually gain continuous value from a product that is not only free, but that also does not require any login. We did the same at Small PDF as well. Like you could use the tool once a day. Like, we try to track you through the local ID. It's not very safe, but, you could really circumvent it if you wanted to really easily, because we could not, the tracking was not watertight, like you could abuse the system. But the point was really like to build this up so you can get into the freemium, and it's still worth it, right? Because everybody who now goes into the freemium, they know what they get out of this. And then we use the trial to onboard you onto the payment system, hopefully building enough goodwill to say that at the end of the payment period, I'm going to pay for this because I already entered my credit card and, it's actually good enough. So that's how I'm thinking about it now in this kind of 4-layered way. And I find it very fascinating. But the principle is exactly what you said. It's the same thing. You build something up, then you cash it and you go to the next step. So it depends on how high the step is. That's what you need to do.
Exactly. I love that. So you said you have an outrageous idea. Here's my outrageous thinking, which maybe I'm preaching the choir, which is great. Always love when my outrageous ideas are landing with someone who also thinks outrageously. So here's the thing, right? I mentioned how digital product has changed a lot over time. It used to be there really was no way that you could, iterate on, even if you could add, it was hard to iterate. And so you had to use humans for the whole journey, including that tough 0 to 1 part. So here's the thing. Websites are a little bit of a residual of that, right? It was like, okay, well, because obviously we can't build a full-blood digital product. We need to have some kind of online presence that can talk about who we are and what we do and all that stuff. But here's the thing, more and more that digital web experience and digital product experience are becoming similar and can be blended. Mm-hmm. And that starts to become almost like a superficial step, right? Because why do you have a site that explains what's behind the curtain, and then you have to go through a sign-up flow, and then you get behind the curtain. Like, if you think about that, does that have to be the case? Probably not. And actually, I'm sure folks are familiar, you lose kind of a lot of people through that sign-up flow, right? And obviously, we know sometimes they're low intent, so we don't care so much. But really, do we need it? Like, and so putting it another way, one of the very fascinating things I saw at Twilio, and this was, I was at Twilio for around 7 years. I started the product growth team back in 2015, and then that was a fun journey. One of the things that we saw was developers weren't even really looking at the site. They were just trying to get into the product.
No.
So it was one of the fascinating challenges we had to do, where we had to like challenge our own assumptions about like, oh, well, that belongs on the marketing site, that, context, because, that's before product. And okay, now they're in the product. Now they know they know what the use cases are. So we can, like, all of that was disruptive. The behavior of the user was, again, just get into the product. And I think we're just seeing that more and more. I think that websites are going to start to become, I think we're going to start to see companies do, actually, we're looking at this at Amplitude, is the merging of the two, making it so low friction to move between the two, to the point that I think it will start to merge. Because as you said, if people fundamentally want to get value, that's what we're trying to do, get value. And we've both said that the market is expecting to get value by trying the product. How does the website fall into that, right? Really, it's just separating content and information and product, and why, So I think that is exactly one of the places in time we're going to see companies do that more and more. And then I think, in 10 years, when we hop back on and do a 10-year anniversary podcast, we're going to be talking about companies who have done that. Because again, why lose those people in funnel? We know what they're here for. They're here for that value. Give it to them, right? But yeah, no, I think that's what's going to happen. Like I said, we're actively actually looking, experimenting with that at Amplitude. So, I mean, one of the things we're doing right now is we're moving our sign up to a page to get you in the door. And then the next kind of concept is, hey, it can be an overlay on the product. So at least it brings you closer. And then a world where, we just start to merge it in. And so, So anyway, I think you see companies starting to like, okay, I'm going to pull the product up in the website so I can show them a little bit more. Like, you've seen companies like start to dip their toe in this water. But yeah, absolutely. So I don't know how outrageous that is, but I believe it.
No, it is. It is. I'm smiling like a stupid, I don't know what to call it. Like, oh Lord, I have to be very careful now, because I got into some hot water on LinkedIn 2 weeks ago, or like a week ago, when I said something of the same in the line of like, this is the emergence of growth, right? We're kind of like, this is everything that you just described is the growth it's the growth domain. And we need to learn from growth with our product team structures how to do marketing and how to do it better when people are landing on our website, right? Like on the http whatever.com. Boy, did I get hate mail from all the marketers telling me I'm a fucking idiot and I shit the bed right now, right? So like, she doesn't know what the 4 Ps are. She doesn't know what this says. You do not need that. Growth is garbage, whatever. And I'm like, you know what? Let me just anger them a little bit more. Here's what I'm thinking. What Laura just said is absolutely 100% true. I think most of what marketing is really, really, really good at is in creating a promise. And that's always what it has been. And this is also where we need them so much. But maybe outside the website, because for that we need a different kind of specialist, which also cannot be product. And I think this is what pissed them off, because I told them that you should attach it to the product discipline, growth, right? Like in general, I'm a very big fan of that. But that does not mean that they're structured like product teams, because you need engineers for this. Exactly what you just explained, right? Like if both is kind of blending, then you cannot just like change the wording. It doesn't happen anymore. Specifically at Small PDF, we had some challenges like this. Like the question was always like, who owns this particular page? And I'm like, well, the title goes to marketing because they know better like what keywords they should farm. The functional component that is loading in the middle where you drop documents in and then things are getting processed should be with growth. It should not be with marketing. I'm sorry. So we need to have shared ownership over different parts of the page.
That's it.
But yeah, I've got to get canceled for this. I'm 100% sure. That's it. I'm done. Like, no, I do not need to show up anymore in a marketing bar. That's what it is. This is what happened. Like, it was really like, so without a joke, I had a lot of angry people.
Let me say this, because I think the market has changed a lot and is changing a lot. And that's what we're talking about here, like the demands of the market. The brain and the skills of marketers are imperative in this world. I actually think one of the mistakes companies make is marketing is isolated to out of product,
No.
and product engineering are in product. And I actually think what needs to happen when I say the marketing, that the website and the products are to merge, it doesn't mean then that product and engineering run the show. It's actually marketing needs to be right the heck there with
Yeah.
them. And companies that excel at this, it's all one team: marketing, product, engineering, design. Everybody's together, and it's one of the most important things to me when I joined a company, and certainly when I joined Amplitude, was getting those teams to like be one team in a real way, because there are skills that marketers have that product and engineering people do not have, right? And you need that everywhere, not just on the website, you need it in the product. Any marketer who ends up listening to this, I'll ask, have you ever been inside of your own product and thought, I think some of this positioning and messaging is not right. I think there's a lot of improvement here, but I don't have a path to do it. Or for me to do it, I'd have to sit down and make a pitch that no one would listen to. And they'd think of 10 which ways that they shouldn't listen to me. And maybe even ask me why. What's the agenda of this meeting? That's a problem, right? So when I say the merging, it's less about, hey, I think that all the amazing work and thinking that marketers do should be obfuscated. I actually think it should be given spotlight and pulled in to an area that a lot of companies don't pull them into. And it's a
No,
huge mistake.
I agree. There's two types of growth people that I enjoy the most. It's usually those that started earlier in their career in marketing and those that started in customer success. They have two very, 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 very distinct skills. One of them knows how to handle the numbers, and the other one knows how to handle qualitative feedback. Those are core skills in product management, or also growth, product management, whatever you want to call it. I think there's more wrong with product right nowadays than with marketing. But if you say something about marketing, then they just close the window and that's it. Like I'm complaining about everyone. That's always what I do, right? Like I try to complain fairly over the entire kind of thing. Anyways, let's get a little bit more practical again. So here's an interesting thing. Like if you say that you would agree with me, yes, and we just made the entire case for ourselves that yes, this is what's going to happen. So there's more happening to the product experience than just what's going to happen on the freemium. It also is, there's something in before that, whether you call it an interactive demo, whatever you call it, right? There's clearly something happening. Now, for sales-led companies, the interesting thing is, let's say you have nothing except 5 Garys that are selling your product into the market. And let's say for some reason it is a SaaS product that is actually useful, that could be running in some kind of PLG motion. The first step to do usually is to have a trial, right? So like against anything else, like the entire resistance that you have in the company and so forth, I still stand by that. And I still think like, hey, start with a trial first, because you will have 3 times more prospects in the pipeline. You will not close all of them, of course, but you have a little bit more data to play with. And then once you are really, really comfortable, open it up maybe a little bit, whatever, and then maybe if it makes sense, you can go to a freemium and also try this out. However, the funny thing is, I just walked you now down the ladder, right? Like backwards. But the thing is, actually, today, I think what every company should have, no matter how sales-led that you are, is this interactive demo thing that I just talked about, where the website and everything else becomes the same, which is before the freemium. Do you know what I mean? Like, I hope I'm not too confusing, but I'm just thinking that because this is universal, right? Like that thing is for the enterprise customers. It is for the down market segment. You said something very clever as well. I think it was before in our pre-talk that executives are 100% making their fingers a little bit dirty when they were trying out the products before they give the okay, whether someone is buying a thing. And if you make this available for them so they do not have to enter a credit card and so forth, even if it's just in an interactive demo, there's something happening behind the scenes. You might not be able to track it, but there's definitely something to happen.
100%. And I agree, right? It really, access, give them access, right? That's the idea, is people want access. They want to see value, and they want it fast because everyone wants everything right away. And of course, our wonderful market, and frankly, probably ourselves, we do. And so, if you get their eyeballs on your site, it's better than not to have that for them because they're there and they want it, right? And, people, executives or elsewise, tend to not have, evaluating a new tool isn't like a week's project. It's something they squeeze in between, oh, good, my meeting ended 10 minutes early. I can go look at that thing and see what it's all about. Or, okay, I've got a slow Friday. Okay, well, I've got 10 things I need to write in this presentation I need to do and all that, like crappy meeting I'm not looking forward to. So I got to save some mental health space for that, whatever, right? I've got 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here, and maybe 3 chunks of 5 minutes here to evaluate this thing. So you're not only getting like limited time often, but again, people are craving speed and they're craving something that they're going to react to. It's going to stick with them. And
Mhm.
often they're not just looking at one, they're looking at a couple. So, what is the great quote? Something like, people don't remember, like who you are, but how they make you feel, something like that.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot we can take from, again, how people psychologically are. So having limited time, knowing that this market is a market that likes to experience product, like to taste the ice cream, taste it to figure out which one they want to get. You
Yeah.
should have samples of your ice cream on your site as best you can, with great positioning and context as to that you are an ice cream store, that you have multiple flavors. It has to be there, but let them taste the ice cream. Yeah.
I think that's exactly right. And I think that one of the things that you really need to understand for yourself as a company as well is like, if one of your activation moments is that they want to see some kind of dashboard with something in them, it doesn't need to be real data, right? Like it does not need to be the actual real data, but like they want to see something that they can like, I think this is how I could present my data now to the board.
Exactly.
And then they're going to compare it with, in the example of Amplitude, in a way that is different from like, oh, I need to export all of this into an Excel sheet and tell my assistant to kind of create graphs out of it. Sounds good, right? It's kind of like, it's like these little moments, I feel like, that we just underestimate so heavily, but they're also very, very hard to measure as well at the same time. So let's stay on the measurement thing, because I know
Yeah.
Amplitude is really strong on this. So how would you say this kind of measurement in regards to like, hey, what should we now build also in an organization? How should we go on from this? I know you're also now stuck on the growth side and so forth. So you're introducing this, you have a freemium, you have this plan and so forth. Before that, the sales-led company was measuring their pipeline by leads, cold, warm, closed, maybe demos in between, something like this. How do you conceptually now approach this? So like what kind of signals do you think they should look at now other than just like, hey, freemiums? So like how many people do we have to use the free product? How should they look at it?
For sure. So first off, like that motion is absolutely still alive and well. Like some people, they maybe test and try free and then they're ready for sales. And what's nice about Amplitude is that there's some good kind of healthy trust out in the market that product-led growth, that the data is good to have, and then Amplitude is strong at that. And so that's absolutely a meaningful still zone where people are kind of pre-ready to jump. And again, it's partly just having a brand where you've earned kind of some value up front, so a salesperson can get over the edge. But yeah, we also now have the self-serve motion that has its own set of milestones that are critical. And basically the way that we think about that is in the notion of North Star. Okay, what is, we're all here, everyone at any company is typically ultimately trying to drive dollars, right? Either save money or make revenue. Everyone kind of ties into that somewhere. So the question is just, hey, with your growth function, what is that North Star? What is that thing that if we move it is like the leverage to move like that down the road? And so for us, that is what we call our number of plus customers, right? Which is our self-serve paid plan. So everything that we do, we try to get people into that motion, and we track, certainly what happens after that. And we have, revenue targets, and we look at those and we forecast those. It's healthy. But our belief from a North Star perspective, hey, what is going to be the thing if we really focus on driving that is going to drive revenue for the company long term, is how many customers we have on that. Because the belief that we have, and I think this is generally a good kind of healthy place to be, especially early in your journey, is that, again, if you can get people from, again, that 0 to 1, 0 to paying you something,
Mhm.
they're already on that accelerated journey. And what we found is that, yeah, people who go through that motion, who go from 0 to paying something, tend to have more, not just kind of experienced value, but in such a concrete way that they've exchanged money for. And you get to a sense of like, there's a lot of things. It's in the sense of, hey, how value, like money for value is exchanged. There's a lot that comes from that. So that's the first hurdle. We're really focused on that piece of it. But it's very important, coming back to data, set your North Star, make sure everyone, marketing, product, engineering, everyone is anchored on that together, fighting for that together. Again, all of those brains, so important. But then also, of course, always you want to understand as best you can. And it's always a learning process and an evolving process, but understand that whole funnel. How do, signups lead to activations? lead to people reaching habit, lead to people going from free to paid. So they're on, your self-serve paid or whatever that motion is. And then how do those transition into pipeline and transition into growth, speed and in amount, right? And conversion and how fast. So funny that we look at that whole ecosystem, we continue to evolve and make that tighter and tighter. But right now, that's the focus, is to get people again in the habit of paying, get them on to what we call our plus plan.
Do you track specifically the expansion rate outside of just like looking at net revenue retention, of course, but like, do you specifically also track the expansion rate of businesses naturally? And are you trying to also look into how many of those are actually just organically growing as they are with you versus just those that are expanding by bringing more business to you of what they already have? I don't know whether you have any thoughts on this one, but like I find this always a very fascinating conversation because a lot more businesses are also starting to grow with you over time than you might think. And you do not want them to look for another tool as they're growing out of you, of course, right? So like we want to stay on them.
Totally. Yeah. So absolutely. So we do definitely track that. And actually, you want to be very intentional with your pricing and packaging to allow for that. So there's a really low rung, for example, paying it's like $49, a month if you go with the annual plan. I think it's like 60 a month if you just go month to month. And that's the kind of lowest tier, but you can grow even within the self-serve plan all the way up to like 20 grand, right?
Mhm.
Like you want to. And so we see people based on their usage moving up, right? So we do track upgrades. And frankly, the great thing about having that motion and the motion growing is that, while you sleep, so to speak, people pay more, right? Because they grow. We love that they grow and they're getting value and it's right there. Like, oh, we need more of this good stuff. They go. So, I think that's, yeah, exactly. You want to set up your motion to be friendly to that because, man, the last thing you want to do is put in all that good work to show value, get momentum, get motivation. They want to pay you, right? All those memes like, take my money, and then you don't. That's not good, right? So yeah, so we do. And I think really one of the things that we were surprised by, we weren't sure. It's always hard to know, like, what are people like not willing to swipe a credit card for? Like, is it 20 grand? Is it 100 grams? Is it
Mhm.
5 grand? Like, at what point does it sort of trigger the like, hey, we need an invoice? And like now CFOs, like, that's always hard to know. But what we did and what I'd always recommend there is, again, never be the one who is the victim of that meme where someone's like out there wanting to give you money and you're not taking it. Like there's little harm, say less harm, in providing those rungs for people to move to. If they don't go there, great, you can remove them, but give them the space to grow. And then
Yeah.
again, PPL is something that people always undervalue, always slow iterate on. And man, is there a lot of juice to be squeezed for most folks in that space.
Yeah, that's definitely true. They're also the most annoying teams to manage because they have so many cross dependencies or like the teams that have to work with this, right? So like I can sing a song or two about this.
Sing a
And
song, yell into an ether, throw things in the wall. Yeah, it just like PPL is so hard, especially because it's kind of like growth in the sense that
no,
deeply cross-functional and you're looking at a whole journey. You're touching everything, right? Folks are doing pricing, packaging, licensing, and that whole number. They are often owning like the highest of the high purchases, as well as having responsibility for the small anytime money's coming in.
no.
And if you think about the level of market knowledge that requires, the level of dexterity of understanding the user mindsets, small, large players. One side, you've got salespeople and go to market. Another side, you've got like product engineering. It is challenging. Lots of respect always to people who are managing that. But again, that one's also been one where technology hasn't really, historically, it's even like 5 years ago,
Mhm.
has been really hard to make changes there. It's starting to get better, but there's tools out to make it a little easier, at least to technically manage. But yeah, man, that people stuff is hard.
People stuff, yeah. It's not going to go away though. I hope not. Yeah.
Again, like you said, maybe AI, maybe one day we'll get to a point where it's like, I've got this like meeting coming up. Okay, here's this person, here's me, here's all the stuff. Can you just tell us like, how did this end? Like that might be nice,
Yeah, I think this is what people don't understand, right? Like their chatbots still do not have any actual money that they can actually spend, right? So like that's maybe one of the problems that we have.
Again, we'll put it in our 10-year anniversary podcast. It can be one of the topics.
You don't have to wait for 10 years. You can also come back earlier. That's fine. So here's one more like left field question again that I have. And I find it very interesting because I just recently discovered also with Amplitude, one of the things that correct me if I'm wrong, I think only your paid plans have online support. And one of the reasons what I'm very interested in right now is like that drives me around is always like this white glove approach. When should you touch customers? When should you not? Like when should you stop giving them any support? And like when should it be personalized? When should it be with AI? Now with AI, we can give better support as well, of course. Through the
Yeah.
chatbots, they're genuinely better. And how, I don't know whether you have any interesting insights on this particular part, but like how do you think about it? Because sometimes I do hear the argument, which is true, that customer experience in how you fix things can also be a very good value. Now, I'm also sitting here at the same time and saying, like, yeah, well, if you cannot experience it in the free plan, then it's not existing, right? Like, then it does not help you to get over the hump. So, how do you think about this at Amplitude right now? Like, how does this fit into the entire thing?
Yeah. So it's kind of a combo, right? So support, let's just start, like, frankly, again, with the user. Everything that we try to do, and every company is doing PLG, should be trying to do, again, get people up over the hump. And so support is one of those things that we're also thinking about and evolving. And that's one of the ones that we had a lot of debate about internally. What do people need at that point? Do they even, we're kind of noticing, right? Again, coming back to people wanting things immediately, people don't often in a self-serve environment, especially, love getting stuck and then needing to reach out to a human and wait on it, right? It's better to have it than not have it in those moments. But really what they want is, like, to get an answer, to have great documents that explain something to them, to, have an AI bot or something that tells them the answer, or even better yet, not have the problem because we're learning and understand it. And then we provide like something out of the box. And so for us, I mean, right now we use that support really is to understand where someone's getting stuck. It's almost like a bug ish, right? If someone reaches out to support, it means like we probably like failed them somewhere. We didn't give them information. We didn't make something easy enough. Like we weren't clear. But we constantly try to experiment and evolve. Like, should we ramp up? Should we change? But you'll see, I mean, we've made some really big investments in self-serve. We've tried to pick up those things. People want more out of the box, get more out of the box and all that. But when it comes to, again, the human element, of course, you got to think about sales. So the other thing we try to do is if we see someone come into the funnel that we think might have a more complex use case, might be one of the ones that might be ready for, again, human element, higher package. We try to catch them and we try to offer the human element in the form of sales because we think that might be helpful at some point. But yeah, support's an interesting dance. I do think that, in my view, maybe controversial, support is so imperative because you are never at a point where your product or your experience is quote unquote bug free, confusing free, complex free.
Yeah.
But it should always be a beacon of a gap. So you should always be trying to fill it. It's kind of how we think about it.
Now, unless you really love listening to customers complaining.
Well, and here's the thing. People don't love...
I do. Don't misquote me now. Yes, go for it.
But yeah, I won't misquote you. That's true. But also, people don't like to complain. Like, whatever. Some people do like to complain, okay. But most people, when they're going through an experience, they hate having things to complain about. They love it just to be good, right? By the time, it's such a pattern interrupt to... Again, you got your 15 minutes on a Friday to evaluate something or to use something, create a report, whatever the heck they're doing in any given product. And they go into it and it's like, oh, like I can't access it. Is that because it's not in my plan? Is it because I'm doing it wrong? Is it because I thought I could do this use case and I can't? This doesn't look the way that I thought it would. It's because my numbers are weird or because I'm using the wrong feature. No one likes that, So that's what I mean, but people don't like to complain. I will add an asterisk to that. People don't like being in an environment where they are stuck and feel the need to complain. And I think, again, it's our job in this world of self-serve to try to identify that and remove those frictions.
I love our support team. I sometimes call them when I have trouble in my kitchen. So I just I just want to talk to them.
They're superhumans. Honestly, and my gosh, if you ever really want to know what is off about your product or your experience, go talk to some support people. They will know, And one thing that we did at Twilio that I really love that always sticks with me is it was part of like the requirement to be on the support rotation when you joined. Like when we were smaller, I think we tried to bring it back a little bit when we were bigger, but especially earlier on in the 20 teens, that was like part of what you needed to do. And it was part of, again, just feeling the problem and not just feeling the customer problem, but feeling the problem of what it took to resolve the problem, right? Even internally. Supporters I talk to who are the most patient, wonderful people in the world, they'll almost always have some kind of crazy process. Like, oh, well, okay, in order for me to solve that, well, okay, so someone asked that, I have this macro, but like I actually this blog post answers it better. And so I try to like say that. And then if I really get stuck, I'm supposed to go to kind of this person, but this is the person that actually knows. And I'm just like, it's crazy the things that they do to help people. But anyway, yeah, just wealth of knowledge.
No, I think creating empathy is anyways a superpower in anyone. I think you need to do it and you need to have it as well. And this is also how I try to also get sometimes empathy for PLG with salespeople. It's a very interesting trick. If you actually manage to show them how difficult it is for someone to find some kind of solution when the only option they have is Gary the sales guy, and they really do not want to talk to you, right? Like they really do not want to. It's very hard to kind of record because it's not going to be in a hotjar recording. You're not going to see this on the website just directly. But I think, yeah, making people feel things, it seems to work. It still seems to work.
Yeah, for sure. And it's at 0 to 1, right? With sales. It's like, that's really hard because when people are at that 0, part of that 0 is exactly, they probably don't want to talk to you. And that just sucks to be needing to be in a position where professionally you need to try to get someone to talk to you that doesn't want to talk to you. Not to say it's not fun and rewarding to get over that. I know that can be very fun. Fun fact, I started my career in sales. And so I love me a good, how do I get this person to engage with me?
If I get reincarnated as a salesperson, I would love to be a salesperson in a product-led sales company that has really good scoring. Like I cannot imagine, this would be the funniest job ever because you have only people, and not only, but like you have only people who are using your product for some kind of reason. And that's a really, really cool thing.
Yes, are already motivated. Again, have already made the jump from 0 to 1 and maybe from 1 to 5. Know the value, know some of the lingo. And really at that point, you're just using your craft to be like, oh, you like that? Okay, well, then you should get more, right? That's so much easier than, oh, you don't know what that is or what we do. Okay, let me try to break it down. And then, it's hard. And hey, excellent sales reps, strong sales reps can do it and they do it. But man, it's always so nice to have a kind of a partner and the one, tee up and hit, right? That's always better.
Yeah, I know that's true. For sure. And I think in this case, it's time to just close it up because I just noticed that we spoke over 1 hour, Laura. And
crazy.
So thank you. Thank you very much for coming to the Product. Is there any way that people should get in contact with you? Do you want people to get in contact with you? And where can they find more of your stuff in case you would start to produce more stuff?
I ever post ever. I do post once in a blue moon. Find me on LinkedIn. I do try to respond when people reach out. I am slow, but please, yeah, feel free to get in contact with me there. And it's been on my to-do list, and I'm saying it publicly so I can hold myself accountable to actually have a website at least, just so I can at least point to the smidgen of things that I do. I can at least have that. So hopefully, maybe by the time this gets out, I don't know what's getting out, so I'm going to work on it. But if you go to my LinkedIn, I'll try and have a link to it. And someday I will. So again, baby steps. As we mentioned earlier, I blame my 3 young children on that. Love them, but love to blame them for things that I don't get to. But then you, of course, brought up that Elena had young kids and does all this stuff too. So again,
she's everywhere.
So no excuses. But yeah. So anyway, one day. But yeah, please, LinkedIn, feel free to reach out. I might be slow, but I do try to get to them.
Thank you so much for spending this hour with me. It was a big pleasure.
Yeah, this has been so fun. Thank you for having me. Like I said, this is great because I felt like I knew you already.
Thank you so much for listening to The Product with Leah. If you don't have enough yet, you can subscribe to my podcast right now at Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or you can head to my website, leahtarin.com, which is leahtarin.com, where you can find much more of my material or just want to work with me.